Decolor, decolonized Glamour Talks. Decolonize my mind, yeah, decolonize. Verschwend nicht meine Zeit, yeah, decolonize. Die Art und Weise, wie ich denke und ich sehe. Decolonize, die Art und Weise, wie ich selbst bin und ich rede. Decolonize, zeig dir, dass alles auch anders geht. Lass uns das Ganze mal anders sehen. Switch Positionen, Realitäten, lass sie mal schweigen, lass uns mal reden. Decolor, decolonize, decolor, decolonized Glamour Talks.
A very warm and heartfelt welcome to you here tonight to the Decolonized Glamour Talks. My name is Lara-Sophie Milagro. I'm an actress, filmmaker, and CEO of the Afro-German producing collective label Noir. And I have the great honor to be your host tonight for this special edition of Decolonized Glamour Talks. Tonight, we will put the focus on the beautiful country and culture of Namibia. And we will also set the spotlight on three wonderful Namibian/German Namibian artists and their work. And we're doing all of this within the anniversary week of 25 years Städtepartnerschaft Windhoek-Berlin that we have been celebrating in the cities of Berlin and Windhoek all of this week. As spaces for discussion and debate are shrinking everywhere at the moment, we really want to fight for these spaces and we want to celebrate these spaces. And we're so thankful and delighted that you're all here tonight to join us within this space. Thank you so much for being here. The glamour of Decolonized Glamour Talks is first and foremost provided by my guests, three wonderful ladies and exceptional artists. My first guest is a Namibian multidisciplinary visual artist who works with both traditional media such as painting and illustration and digital media to create layered works of art. Her work is personal and introspective, often using bold colors, graphics, and abstract patterns to convey an idea, mood, or theme. She develops strategies to deconstruct the educational impact of texts and images from colonial archives and places them in a new context. She has exhibited her work worldwide in New York, Windhoek, Belgrade, Zurich, Hamburg, Berlin, to name just a few. Please welcome Vitjitua Ndjiharine. Join me on stage. Driven by her passion for rhythmic electronic beats, powerful drums, and unforgettable vocals, my next guest transforms every DJ set into a unique experience. She is a captivating artist behind the decks and takes her audience on a musical journey through tribal house, enchanting them with compelling sounds from Afro house, Latin house, tech house, and house music. She also knows the differences between all of them and will teach us about it. Please join me on stage, Nika Herero. My third guest learned Indian classical dance as the foundation of her professional dance training. Later also modern dance, as well as different contemporary dance forms in Europe, India, South Africa, and Brazil. She has worked as a solo dancer with the Berlin Philharmonics under Sir Simon Rattle. And a central theme of her current artistic work is the relationship to our environment and access to nature as a privilege and part of a post-colonial discourse. Through her work and research in dance therapy and holistic movement therapy for her master thesis, she explores the resources of the human body for healing transformation. Welcome to Decolonized Glamour Talks, Duduzile Voigts. Now, self-care is an act of resistance, said, I think Audre Lorde said that, or many great women. And so let's start with an act of self-care and have a drink together. So cheers. Sorry, guys. A fourth guest is here tonight who is not on this stage with us, but has a very special place in this room over there. And this is the shrine with our ancestors. Not with all of them, probably, but with a selection of our favorites. And of course, we all know the importance of ancestors, even if that knowledge maybe got lost a little bit in today's modern cultures, also in the German culture for sure, that they're always there, that they're supporting us, that we need them, and that we absolutely rely on them, especially as Black women. I don't know if you would agree, you know, like operating in male spaces, in white spaces, you definitely need that extra little bit of ancestor spirit now and again. They always have been around, of course, also here at the Volksbühne and at every German theater. I think especially when we started to gain access to these cultural institutions that have been closed for us artists of color for so long, I think we had massive ancestor support. And now we have given them a place and a face, because it's important to give a place and a face to important people that have very little visibility in society. And of course, you also have to keep the ancestor spirit up, you know, give them a little treat now and again. That's why we have some food and drink provided for them there. Please don't take it. It's not for you. It's also not for us. It's for them. I would say let's toast to the ancestors also, because they're the reason why we're here today and why we occupied this space here today with you and together. So let's have another toast to the ancestors. You can applaud. Singer, songwriter, and actor Janelle Monáe, who I adore, once said, "I spend a lot of time in the future, but to help the future, sometimes you got to go back to the past, and sometimes you got to stay in the present." And today we will look at all three time levels, as it were, so the past, the present, and the future. But let's start with the present. You should always live in the moment, so I think that's a good place to start. And I want to start with you, Vitjitua. I would like to start with you with congratulations on your recent project, Memory Scripts, which opened in the beginning of this week here in Berlin. Tell us a little bit about the opening. How was the vernissage? And maybe give us also a little bit of a teaser of what this project is all about. Not too much, because we're going to talk about it in more detail later.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so the work opened. It's a projection in a public space outside. Well, not really public space, but it's on the facade of the Berlin City Parliament.
Abgeordnetenhaus, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And I titled it Memory Scripts because memory scripts, it's a cognitive term that comes from psychology and how your brain remembers certain things. It's like a script that your brain remembers, and it usually applies for things that you have to do every day, like commuting to work or picking up your kids from school. Your brain stores that information so that it's easier for you to just do a task. So I wanted to take that concept and the concept of programming and how our minds are programmed, but apply it to cities and how certain information and knowledge or memories are prescribed to certain spaces or monuments, countries, and whole identities are kind of woven around that. So that was the main idea of memory scripts, and then thinking about memory scripts around Windhoek and then around Berlin, and how these kind of overlap. What are the memories and spaces and places that we remember the most from these cities?
Nika, big fat congratulations to you too on a big upcoming DJ event that you will be hosting in December at the Weekend Club, the legendary Weekend Club here in Berlin. Tell us more about this event. What is going to happen and how can we get tickets?
Yes, I'm super excited. Exactly on the 19th of December, I'm gonna have my hosting night, and I'm gonna invite some DJs to come and play with me. It will be an all-black lineup, which I'm really proud of because, yeah, it's my night, so I want to have it the way I want to have it. And if you want to come, let me know. I have some guest lists left over. We have a South African DJ opening, playing a little slower Afro house music. We will go from more tech housey, Afro tech all over to a little harder music. So I think everyone will be satisfied.
So go get your ticket. Highly recommended. Dudu, you too have a very exciting recent project that I would like to congratulate you for. You started to do research for your PhD in cultural studies and anthropology. And your research will mainly take place in South Africa and Namibia, right? In South Africa, where you grew up, and in Namibia, where your mother comes from, so you also have roots there. What did it feel like to return to South Africa and Namibia now for the beginning of your research?
I think South Africa felt familiar because it is a familiar space, although I'm actually also intentionally moving more into my childhood spaces. But for Namibia, I think it's a big step for me because I've always had this wish also to come back into Namibian society with a project, with work, outside of maybe my kind of familiar ties. So yeah, I'm starting that journey now, and I went on a wonderful 1-month research journey in Namibia, and it was very, very beautiful and very touching and very personal as well.
Before we dive deeper into your amazing projects, let's take a moment to look back to see how you got where you are today. Vitjitua, you were born in upstate New York to Namibian parents and were raised in Namibia. You graduated from City College in New York in 2017. And in 2018, you received a research grant that enabled you to work in the archives of the Ethnological Museum in Hamburg and the National Archives of Namibia. You also coordinate art and history workshops with various artists and young people throughout Namibia, and also for young people. Yeah. And in 2021, you were an artist in residence at the Decoloniale here in Berlin. In 2021, you were also a fellow at the Academy Schloss Solitude in Stuttgart, where you created an ancestral gallery and investigated your family's history. And let's have a look at that.
Die Aufarbeitung wird noch Generationen dauern. Die Lücken im Gedächtnis sind groß, auf beiden Seiten. Das zeigt auch Vitjitua Ndjiharines Arbeit an der Akademie Schloss Solitude. Die Stipendiatin hat einige ihrer Vorfahren in einer Art Ahnengalerie verewigt.
Wenn du deine Familiengeschichte erforschen willst, reicht das nur bis zu einer bestimmten Generation zurück. Denn Informationen sind geraubt worden, verloren gegangen. Diese aufzuspüren war für mich sehr wichtig. Es ist wie eine Offenbarung.
Bei ihren Recherchen in ethnografischen Sammlungen hat sie viele Alltagsgegenstände und Fotografien ihres Volkes entdeckt. Im Völkerkundemuseum Zürich stößt sie in einem Buch auf ein ganz besonderes Objekt.
Dieses Objekt hier zum Beispiel ist ein Symbol meines Stammes, also ein sehr wichtiges Stück. Es sind sogar noch Haare daran. Es war wirklich beeindruckend, nicht nur archivierte Bilder meines Volkes zu finden, sondern auch zu wissen, das sind Menschen, mit denen du verwandt bist.
Vitjitua Ndjiharines Familiengeschichte lässt sich hier nachlesen. Ihr Urgroßvater, ein deutscher Soldat im damaligen Deutsch-Südwestafrika. Wie die Künstlerin ihre Geschichte und die Leerstellen sichtbar macht, ist beeindruckend.
Vitjitua, how did you discover these items linked to your ancestors in that Swiss museum? That's a crazy story. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I first of all came to do art on Namibian and German history because I was really interested in exploring certain facets of my identity that I felt like we were not talking about. It's just certain things that I was curious about. And really, it was more exploring Herero culture as a Herero woman and Herero identity. And it just kind of evolved from there. Also, as a Black Namibian, there's only so much information that you have about your family the further back you go. Like, I know my grandmother, I know a bit about her mother and a bit about her father. But beyond that, there's so many gaps. And I always just wanted to understand, who are my people and who are the people that I came from, as a way to also try to understand myself. And also learning that I also have German ancestors as well. So I also started to do a bit of research on that, just based off of some names and some surnames, based on what family members know and like oral histories within the family. And then I took that into the archive once I had the opportunity to work within the archival spaces. And at some point I was like, I think I'm done, and just when I thought I was done, there's a German Namibian historian who approached me at a conference, and he saw my name and surname, and he's based in Switzerland at the Basler Afrika Bibliographin, and he was like, I have some interesting information for you that might be interesting. And I had a conversation with my grandmother, and I was like, this German Namibian man approached me. What do you think this could be about? And she was like, it's possibly about her grandfather, who was a missionary, or not a missionary, sorry, an evangelist. Yeah, then I came to Switzerland, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. So then I discovered that there was a whole collection of cultural objects that belonged to my family that are now in the museum. And this is the project that you just saw the video. Yeah, it's just been an ongoing process. Every single time I think I'm done with the archive, there's always something that kind of pulls me back in.
Many objects that were stolen from African countries during the colonial period are still held in museums in the global north. So why is the current restitution debate so important, especially when we think about the relation to unresolved colonial trauma?
A lot of that trauma is unresolved, and a lot of that information is still missing. These are things that belonged to people. They're not just, objects. And one of the things that I sort of talked about in that workshop was that, you can imagine, a necklace or some bracelets or some clothing items that belong to a family member of yours, but you cannot have it because it's in a glass case somewhere in a museum. And to really just kind of personalize it like that, to maybe help people understand why this matters and why this is important. It's not just our history and culture and knowledge, but it's also our inheritance. And even just the process of collecting it was, a process of depossession, to take something away from someone. If you took a knife away from somebody in the 1800s, it's not like they can go to a shop and buy a new one, It's like it's a whole process of somebody made that knife. So much more than just an object. So yeah, I think it's still important to keep talking about this.
Yes, that's what we're doing tonight. Thank you. Nika, as an emerging talent on the Berlin DJ scene, you have already made a name for yourself with bookings at renowned venues such as Georgia Bar, Weekend Club, Amano Rooftop Bars, Hotel The Room, Provocateur, The Door, and Berlin Fashion Week. Your energetic sets at brand events for Plume at the Perukeville Festival, Neo House, Link & Co., Café am Neuen See, We Are Social Germany, and Pitaya Düsseldorf have earned you a steadily growing and enthusiastic fan base. So let's take a brief look at your work.
This is the jungle in South Africa. So run, color boy, run, color boy, run, color boy, like a hungry tiger. I see the soldier, I hear the revolver, but have no fear, they've just freed Mandela. Out of the jungle, here we go.
Your evolution as an artist really amazes me and inspires me and empowers me. It really does, because you've been DJing for almost or only a year now, and not only that, you already played over 40 gigs in high-class venues, but you have a regular daytime job. So you have that job during the day, and then you're DJing at night. You are an administrative consultant in an educational institution, and at night you're a DJ, and a very successful one. So what was the deciding factor for you to pursue a DJ career, and how do you combine these maybe only seemingly very different professional worlds?
Well, my motivation probably was to get out of the hamsterrad, we love to say, the 9 to 5. I'm really thankful for my securing job, but I actually realized that I thought I had a hobby and some passion, and I always thought, traveling and going for dinner with my friends is my hobby and my passion. And then I was like, during Corona, actually, it came to my mind, this is so sad. Is this really my passion? No, and it's not my hobby. Everyone loves to travel. Everyone loves to go to a restaurant. So I thought, okay, maybe I should, develop something for myself. And I have a lot of friends who are DJs, and I always went with them to their gigs. And I was like, maybe I should go and have my own gigs, because I love what they are doing. I love to show. I love music. I mean, I grew up with music in my household, and I started working in nightclubs when I was 18. So almost 20 years. So I'm like, why not play music for people, or especially create music or create a set and show people the music I like currently, because it's always changing. And then I started playing, and somehow it went like this, and I played so many gigs. I still cannot believe it. So I'm really thankful, and I'm still learning. I'm a beginner, but I love the failures. I love the experiences and the people I meet, and this year and everything that's ahead. So I think it's more like a work-life balance. For me.
Udo, you studied contemporary African dance and psychology at UCT, so the University of Cape Town, from which you graduated in 2012. In 2022, you also graduated with a Master of Religious and Cultural Studies from the Humboldt University Berlin. You started to dance when you were really young. And by the time you were a teenager, you had already danced with the Faster Than Light company here in Berlin, participated in the award-winning dance film Rhythm Is It with the Berlin Philharmonics, and danced as a soloist in Stravinsky's Firebird with the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra. So do you remember when you first discovered your love for dancing, and when your wish manifested to become a dancer?
My parents used to have a lot of community and activities and parties at home. Those were the anti-apartheid days. So all the South African people from Berlin had a home in our home. So I was already dancing at that time. And then I believe even as a small kid, I would always walk around, create movement, create space. But I think for me to really come to that point, to realize that this is my purpose and this is how I want to also share in the world, was through these projects. With the Faster Than Light Company, with the Berlin Philharmonic. They were doing a lot of community-based dance projects where they were bringing together professionals and non-professionals. They were bringing together a lot of kids also from refugee kind of experiences into the dance. And it was really so fascinating for me to observe their development and their change in that time of dance and practice. And then I think ultimately when I was chosen to dance the solo part for the Firebird, for the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, I think that was really a moment where the lights switched on and I realized, okay, this is my calling.
You learned classical Indian dance as a child and once described it as the foundation for your dance education. So how did you get into this style of dancing?
So that, again, I actually have to thank my parents for that great foundation that they gave me, because I was loving dance. I wanted to dance so much. But of course, I was a girl. I was influenced by Disney. I thought I was going to be a ballet dancer, right? So I had hoped that I was going to be put in a ballet class. But because of the distance and the organization, and I think also the aesthetics, the culture, everything that kind of gets taught in ballet, my parents decided, no, you're actually just going to go to our local temple just up the road. We had a temple as we were living in South Africa in a predominantly Indian area. So they literally just took me up the road to the classical Indian dance in the community. And I'm so grateful for it because it gave me a really, really strong foundation, a lot of discipline. It's hard work. Like ballet, it's a classical form. So you train for many, many years until you are actually considered, an able dancer. But it gives you so much more than ballet. I think in terms of grounding, in terms of rhythm, but also in terms of heritage and mythology, because in classical Indian dance, you dance the stories of the gods, you dance the philosophy. So I think from kind of that early age 6, I started with my classical training. There was always this kind of message instilled in me that you are not just dancing here for beauty, you're dancing with a higher purpose. And my teacher would always say to us, when you dance, in classical dance, you are creating balance between the heaven and the earth. So this is the philosophy that I grew up with, so I'm very grateful for that.
I think these references that you just described of classical Indian dance are very well visible in a work that you did in 2022 with the musicians Kefa Rasta and Gemma Labar, and that I really love. I think it's a really very beautiful piece of work. So let's watch an extract from it.
Is illegalo. Illegal. Kaimesh is illegalo. Illegal. Kaimesh is illegalo. Illegal. Person illegalo. Illegal. Person illegalo. Illegal. Person illegalo. Illegal. Stop deportation. Oh. Stop deportation. Oh. Stop deportation. Oh. Stop deportation, no. No border, no nation. Stop deportation. No border, no nation. Stop deportation. Stop deportation. Stop deportation.
Bewegungsfreiheit für alle. Bewegungsfreiheit für alle. Freedom of movement for everyone.
I think as an artist, as a dancer, particularly as a dancer who identifies as Black, I think our work is always political, even if we are in studio creating, of course, if we are on stage, but in any kind of creative space that we move. And it becomes political because we move with intention and we move with histories and memories. One very powerful kind of embodied experience that you can have in the dance, and this is how I dance, and this is also how I teach in my workshops, is that you never dance alone. you're always dancing with the visible and the invisible. You're always dancing with your ancestors. You're always dancing with the histories, the past, present, and the future.
Nika, your work also has a lot to do with providing space for people, like space to express themselves, space for self-care, because dancing really is, even for me, I'm far away from being a professional dancer, but it's an act of self-care. In this space that you're creating through your music, you bring together people from all over the world. Do you see your work as political?
Sometimes I see myself, since I named myself Nika Herero because my father was a Herero, I think I create actually, especially in German places, always some kind of information, and then I'm just educating them about the Hereros. So of course it's not the workplace itself that educates, but it's my name and my person itself, or the interest in myself, the music you choose to play. And I usually play not typical commercial Afro house. I try to have the real Afro house that has more the indigenous spirit in it. And people usually come to me, oh, this is not Afro house that we used to know, or the TikTok Afro house they think I'm playing. And then I'm like, yeah, it's an education for free now. You get to know the real Afro house. Isn't that nice? And usually people love it. And sometimes I play in places, it's not always community based. So there are some parties where you know who's coming, because the people are coming for the party or the community they expect. But sometimes there are also a lot of tourists, usually South African tourists. And I see how they shine on the dancer because they know the music. And then the people around them also kind of adapt to it and they get to know something new. So I think I'm not in the place right now to educate, but I think DJs themselves totally are, especially the big fishes. They need to educate. Afro House has such a big history, and it goes back, when you think about it, to Chicago House, Detroit Tech, and I think it's actually it should be in their role to educate where Afro House comes from and what Afro House really is.
Does your Namibian ancestry influence your work? And if so, in which ways?
Well, I think it's maybe my desire to discover my own heritage that influenced myself. I grew up in West-Berlin, and I always said I grew up transcultural, because I had a lot of Turkish friends, Palestinian friends, Lebanese friends, Polish friends, because my mother's from Poland. And then we had our own little culture. We didn't have like the multicultural, no, we created our own culture. We spoke Turkish, we spoke Arabic, and then some people spoke Polish, and then we all did it together. But now that I grew up and I actually surrounded by more African friends, I traveled a lot, and I actually think this is also myself, my own journey to discover myself, and of course to also meet my ancestors.
Dudu, Namibian history and Namibian German history also keeps occurring in your work. And in 2021, so in the midst of the pandemic, actually, you have created a very powerful dance improvisation, Restorative Justice for Namibia, that refers to the genocide of the Nika Herero people committed by Germany between 1904 and 1908. So let's have a look at an extract of that work.
Since the arrival of the German settlers and the colonization of our territories, our ancestors were never seen or heard. They remained objects whose land, property, and women could be taken at will. Today, we, the generations of those victims, continue to be objects not seen or heard. Our pain has been objectified into benevolent social projects given by those who apparently see themselves as paternalistic caretakers of a people whom they seem to think are incapable of speaking for themselves.
So I think because I, grew up in a family that has both histories of colonizers and being colonized, or also, kind of steering the resistance, because some of my ancestors are also those who led the resistance against the British in South Africa. And then on my mother's side, I have ancestors who came to Namibia and colonized Namibia. So I think for me, for a long time, I had a very kind of also tension inside of me that I could feel. And I think a lot of us also feel that kind of grow up in this kind of space. And for me, because maybe I am a very embodied kind of sensual being, this is how I've always experienced life, I could also feel that inside of me, in my body, those tensions. So I think for me, naturally, dance always became that space of reflection, of communication, of negotiation. And then also, because I had brought in the psychology, and then I brought in further, training as well in dance therapy, as well as more kind of shamanic dance traditions, both from a kind of modern approach, but also going back into my own tradition in South Africa in terms of our own dance healing practices that we have, because we have a very strong tradition of using dance and music as a healing practice. This is our ancient medicine that we use. And I have gone through the very kind of strict and rigorous training of a process of initiation. So I am now also an initiated healer and dancer in my tradition. And all of that has really, I think, brought me to a point when I dance, and all of my ancestors can be present, and they can also be present next to each other and stand side by side. That was not always the case. And for the Namibian part, I think for me, naturally, since my childhood, spending time on the farm, vast lands, that Germans had taken and stolen away. So I remember these childhood experiences of just being in these vast, vast lands and having the silence. One of the things that I had completely kind of forgotten as well is the richness of the soil, the richness of the land, the crystals. It's like the whole place is just covered in stones and crystals, and everything just has this magical kind of glitter and feel to it, which was for me, very, very powerful, really, about this humility and the silence, and also the ability to listen. Coming in not just with your ideas, with your stories, with your projects, but just also having that humility to listen, especially with somebody with my name that represents a colonial history in Namibia. So I'm still also finding out how to negotiate that.
Vitjitua, your work often questions the authority to interpret. Who is actually telling which stories, from which perspective, and about what? And to challenge these narratives, your art looks at history from a decolonial perspective. And we will now watch an extract from a lecture performance that you gave on narratives and perspectives in 2020.
As I sat there, surrounded by pieces of the past, I couldn't help but wonder, what stories are hiding behind these walls? This architecture that is all around us, but yet inaccessible to so many of us. I think the most important work being done right now is the redefining and reclaiming of these traces of the past in order to usher in new ways of thinking, and most importantly, new ways of viewing ourselves.
In one of your recent projects, Solar Punk, a story of sand and energy, love the title, you reimagine Namibia's future through a sustainable lens. The project was selected from 47 international applications for the European National Institute for Culture Fund 2024 that culminated in a traveling exhibition. The vernissage was at the FNCC Gallery in Windhoek in October this year. In what specific way does this project envision community-centered worlds? And do you feel that these visions are utterly utopian, given the state the world is in right now? Or do you see it's already materializing?
The Solar Punk project was a way to sort of envision solar punk future for Namibia, which I'm sure many of you here know what solar punk is. It's kind of a little bit different from cyberpunk. But the question of utopia is always an interesting one for me, because utopia is also authoritarian in a way, depending on who's deciding what and what the rules are.
Yeah, it's only a dream. It's not achievable. It's just an utopia.
Exactly. But for me, I thought the utopia, my kind of understanding of a utopia is looking at ancestral knowledge as a form or something that can lead us to notions of maybe not necessarily utopia, but just thinking about how we can connect with the land, thinking about stewardship versus ownership, thinking about materiality and sustainability. And so I actually looked to the past as the future, thinking about maybe how the ancestors used to live. And then the other aspect of solar punk too, which is an important aspect of it, is not just being, one with the land and, post-capitalist, but also technology. And what does the technology do? I think we are heading in a very weird direction as far as technology goes. I was really interested in just thinking about ancestral knowledge and working with Namibian folk tales and trying to understand what these folk tales are telling us about materials and sustainability and the land. So that was my understanding of solar punk, that maybe technology in the future is something that is sort of inspired by the past.
And also to reconnect to knowledge that had already been there. I think that's really fascinating, because we are told so often, we talked about that, congratulations, you're the first one, to do that, or you're the first, especially as women of color, you're the first one in this space, or you're the first one to do this, or to win that prize, or to do whatever you do. And actually, it's probably not true, because people did it before you, and they were just not visible, that you one little part in a lineage of people who already did what they did. You have history and roots, and it didn't only start now, today. We have talked a lot about the past, and before we dive more into the present and of course the future, we could need something, I think, that helps us conclude the past. Not sweep it under the table like Germans love to do. Just give it a place and a space for now. For me, rituals are very important in my everyday life. They ground me. Rituals do help. And that might include to honor the ancestors and to celebrate the ancestors, and, not forget that you have history and roots. It might include to support people who are close to you, but not only people who are close to you or who you love, just to be nice to people, actually. You don't necessarily have to love them, but just be nice, especially in Berlin, give them a smiling face. For me, it also includes a ritual that I often do, and that was or is practiced from my German family as well as my Guyanese family, and that is burning sage, Salbei. We can't burn sage here at the Volksbühne because it's not allowed. Even though also German theaters could need a little bit of sage now and again, I think, to chase away just old spirits. But what we can do, because sage is very strong, we can rub it, and by pure coincidence, we have little bags of sage here with us on stage, and we found out you don't even have to rub it. It's so that the smell is so intense, so that we can clean our mind and our spirits for the present, and conclude with the past for now. doing its work, let's dive into the present. After I have given you a brief insight into what I do to empower myself, I'm now curious, what strategies have you developed to advance in your career? Let's talk about both financial and emotional strategies. What grounds you? What allows you to work as an artist the way you want to work? Vitjitua, in which spaces are you best able to claim and own spaces?
As an artist working in the Namibian context, like one thing that I just want to mention with the video that you saw me standing in front of the statue, that statue has now been removed from the city center thanks to the work of decolonial activist Hildegard Titus. She's in the room tonight also. So just knowing that things can change and things can be done. One thing of like looking at this ancestral knowledge as the future is understanding that we're already there. You know, in Namibia, we already sort of embody solar punk values with the way that we engage with the land, and, you know, with this idea that we are not, you know, quote unquote developed. It's like maybe we don't need to develop to catch up to Europe. Maybe it's also okay to have open spaces and you know, pockets of land that are not built on, and where we still have indigenous trees and indigenous plants, you know? So just knowing that helps me a lot and grounds me a lot. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to move back to Namibia, because I wanted to reconnect and have that access to space and to land.
Where did you live? You lived in Berlin. Actually,
I lived in Berlin for a bit, and then I also lived in New York for a number of years. And, you know, these are big cities where almost every single plot is like allocated for development or for building. And it's not to say it's not the same for Windhoek. It's just a different way of engaging with the land and the landscapes. And I think these are the places that really allow me to take up space. And I think also from a socio-political perspective here, space here is so allocated and so contested, and it's like, who can be in public space? Who can sit, you know, at this bench, and who can walk into this building? So yeah, I love being back home. I love being in Namibia. I love that there's just a certain kind of freedom that I can still access, and not every single thing is defined. And that gives me freedom and space to also define things for myself. Other artists who are also doing this type of work and really making changes, you know, that also really gives me hope for the future. Yeah.
Nice. So Berlin was not for you?
No.
Okay, that's okay.
But I'm happy to be back, and I'm also happy to go back.
I've always needed to be in other spaces where there is a different culture, there's a different way of relating. I think speaking to the same idea, you know, of much more freedom, but also of a more of a cultured kind of community-based way of being. So that has been my strategy, I think, of survival. I'm always in a creative space. I'm always a dreamer. So I dream at night a lot, but I also dream during the day. And that really, I think, helps me a lot. The future is now, because we are our ancestors' future. So we are here right and now, and we dream here right and now. So yeah, that's my journey I'm on.
Well, when I think about it, I think it has a lot to do with myself. Yeah, like reflecting. I actually always thought, I'm sunshine, and I think the world or the sun is always shining for me, and I don't have any real struggles I want to fall for, because I'm always a fan of not bathing in your problems too long. Welcome the pain, the chaos, and then say goodbye and let it go, and try to focus on the nice things. But I think also it's important to reflect and to learn from every struggle you have. So find your inner voice and maybe see what is this one situation or this relationship or this experience doing with you, and why is it doing that with you, and what is the inner child has to do with that maybe, and what is something you can heal. Is it a generational trauma or not? Is it something you can actually you can actually hear, or if not, can you discover it? And it can also help. So for me, it's mostly journaling, reflecting, sitting with it in stillness, and just listen to it. And then sometimes you also feel you have your own answers in yourself. And yeah, this is something that helps me.
I think we do that not often enough to, really let each other know how we get through difficulties, especially as artists, especially as women of color. Not only celebrate our successes and, social media, like one success after the other, and everybody's doing better than you, but also talk about the challenges and also how we can overcome them. Vitjitua, you lived in many different spaces and many different places. Among them, as you already said, New York, Windhoek, and Berlin. And you've surely drawn on your experiences that you had in Berlin and Windhoek for your project, Memory Scripts. So this project, as I already said, is part of the official artistic program of the Anniversary Week, celebrating the 25-year city partnership between the two cities, Windhoek and Berlin. This also includes our event here tonight. And the project, your project, Memory Scripts, uses the urban space where memory scripts are being projected onto the, as you already mentioned as well, the House of Representatives, the Abgeordnetenhaus. So let's take a quick look at that, because we were at the vernissage. So you already described earlier that memory scripts are patterns that help us organize information about the world, about our everyday life, like a kind of mental framework. Now, relating it to this city partnership, Windhoek-Berlin, what did it mean to you? I think one of the last sentences projected on to the building was city partnership or twin cities, Windhoek-Berlin, ? Why a question mark?
Question mark. There's so many in the projection. I played a lot with definitions of what is a partner, define partner. What is a sister, define sister. What is a twin, define twin. And the text is kind of moving like a script. It's just kind of spitting out results, and then they get erased, and then it spits out a different results, kind of like a programming script would kind of run. And I just kind of wanted to think about that in this context, right, of Windhoek and Berlin, which are also microcosms for Namibia and Germany, of course. I think we cannot leave this out of the conversation. What does this partnership mean? What does it, entail? Is it equal? Are we equal? Are we sisters? Are we twins, Yeah, it's just all of these sort of random things and histories and memories and that are related but not related, connected but not connected. But I wanted to include these sort of contrasting histories, that they're all part of the history of Berlin, but somehow we only focus on certain histories and certain topics. All of these sort of places and spaces, and they're all also influenced by the origins of empire and colonialism, and it's a lot of links. Some of them are loose, some of them are more concrete, some of them are just something that I'm imagining, like from Kreuzberg to Katutura, or from taking the Nachtbus Tuambili, you know, it's just like a silly little thing of like, I can go with a nachtbus to Windhoek, you know, but yeah, that's more or less the ideas.
And how is the atmosphere in Windhoek? What is also the political meaning of this anniversary weeks? Is there anything that you could share about like how people feel about that in Windhoek?
For most of us, of course, we are questioning, in a sense, like, what does this mean, right? Mm-hmm. What does this partnership mean? What does celebrating 25 years mean? And a lot of it is coming from the German side and from a German institution. And at a particularly interesting time too. So there's always that question of like, what is sort of behind this? What is the process behind this? And what do these types of projects do? And who are they for? And personally, I think it's more for Germany than for Namibia. I mean, you know, I'm just saying my honest answer because, of course, they also fund it. And that also plays into, I think, a lot of the power dynamics and the power imbalances. And then also, I mean, from the Namibian perspective too, it's like a lot of the Namibian institutions are really skeptical. Firstly, Windhoek is the only city partnership of Berlin, the only city in Africa partner of Berlin. So why doesn't Berlin have any other partners in Africa? And why only Windhoek? I mean, of course, we know why, because of the colonial history. But because of that colonial history, it is always, we will always keep questioning. When it comes time to do the right thing, Germany has shown time and time again that it won't do the right thing when it comes to reparations and all of that. But they will give us a great cultural program. You know what I mean? And that's where it ends. So yeah, that's my personal opinion. And I think I will always question why.
I just leave it at that. Dudu, we have talked about claiming spaces, and you have also explored in your work a lot the relationship between humans and nature. A central theme being the post-colonial discourse on our relationship with the environment, and what I find especially interesting and important, the access to nature as a privilege. And I would like to now show a short extract from that beautiful work.
So I think for me in this work, it really came from, again, my own personal kind of history and experience. I'm not a very fearful person. I have courage to go out into the world. But I've always had this fear for water. And I never really could understand why. But I kind of had a feeling that there's something more to this than just me being fearful. And I started reflecting on why that is, and also why that is quite a common thing in at least my Southern African experience and my Southern African Black experience. It's a common thing not to feel empowered when we relate to bodies of water, especially to the ocean. There was a lot of segregation that happened in South Africa. Oceans were not accessible for Black people. The only oceans that were accessible were the ones that were dangerous. The ones that were accessible, that were nice, were kept for the white population. But of course, we also have our own cultural relationship to water and ocean, because for us, it is actually a sacred space, because you would have everything there. You would have the surfer, but you would also have the prayer, the healer inside the water baptizing. You know, you'd have somebody who has never seen the ocean, who has traveled far with the bus, coming with their buckets and taking the water back home, because again, it's something holy, something sacred for us, you know. So one time I took a walk in India, and then there was this beautiful, powerful, strong Black woman surfing. And I couldn't believe it. And, you know, I had to talk to her and I had to approach her. And she's actually the one who invited me and took me into the water for the first time on the surfboard, which is also some of the stories I do share in my piece as well as we go on later. That's what I worked with. So my practice was swimming and surfing.
Will you, in your thesis, also include these discoveries that you made in your practical work? Is there a connection? Like, are you also going to use that for your research?
A lot of that stuff was really oppressed under our colonial and apartheid rule. We had something that was called the Witchcraft Act. So a lot of our indigenous practices had to go underground, and they are now really kind of reawakening. So we are remembering our songs and our dances that we used to dance for nature, that we used to dance to call the rain, that we used to dance to communicate with nature when it's time to plant the seeds. So this is what my research is about. Yes.
Nika, speaking of claiming spaces, you are often the only woman, and I assume also the only Black woman in a lineup of DJ artists. For example, recently at a big and important electronic music festival, we're not giving out any names. Here you find yourself in 2025 being the only female in a lineup of DJs at this important festival. Do you make that a topic to the people who organize this? Do you feel it is like a compromise that you're there, or maybe the opposite? Do you feel it's a success that you're there? So, you know, because at least you're there, even though you're the only one. But yeah, how do you deal with that situation?
In that one case, I also had contact with a reporter from a newspaper who actually pointed out that topic to me and had an interview with me. And I was like, well, she is right. And then I started to look at it. And then I also thought about my experience with the hosting. When I try to find DJs, of course, I would love to have an all-Black lineup. But then on the other hand, it's a money thing, a resource thing also. I mean, I have a full-time job, so I can only research at a certain time on the weekend. People, of course, for a big festival, people try to get money. So they try to book big artists. So, of course, like Shimza, Black Coffee, all the people were there. People who probably widely known in Germany. In NRW, there are a lot of Black DJs. So why don't you book local DJs? Why do you have to get someone from Berlin? I'm thankful, don't get me wrong, but I was like, okay, maybe it's really a research thing. And of course, there's no real platform that everyone knows. You have to research to get to those platforms. So it's also, again, a research work. There needs to be something bigger, something more maybe national, something bigger national-wide where people can go and say, okay, this is maybe an Instagram page that leads me to another platform where I can look for DJs in my area for that genre with that background or so on. But I think for now, I didn't find anything that national-wide. I can name some in Berlin. And I know that there's something in the making in Berlin, from what I heard. This also takes time. So for now, I don't want to blame them. But I mean, they probably have big teams, so you can start earlier with the research, maybe.
So yeah, that would be an interesting and important new project, like to have a platform like that, where you can find each other. Because we only recently, like maybe, I don't know, 4 to 5 years ago, started to do exactly that as actors of color and as Black actors, So if you're looking for, I don't know, a camera person or actors, directors, different areas of expertise in film or theater, now slowly you have like networks where you can find people, and that's what we were talking about earlier. They were always there, but you couldn't find them. They were not visible. That would be maybe something for the future that could also stir up the DJ scene a little bit. The question to all of you, where do you set your boundaries? What is not negotiable for you in your work as an artist? Where do you say no?
Okay, I have the mic to my face, so I will start. I think I'm starting to think about this more and more. Where I would start to say no is in projects and processes that still keep the conversation surface level, I think. I'm starting to reach, I think, my limit with that, because you always come and do the same or similar thing, you know? I think I want to work with spaces and platforms that really are interested in thinking about the future and not just, oh, we didn't know. Because when the conversation is always, oh, we didn't know, so come here and tell us. We don't know. Come here and tell us we don't know. Come here and tell us we don't know. That becomes the conversation, and that becomes the work that I'm doing every single time. And I think that in itself is a distraction. I think that's the work of colonialism, is keeping us as Black people and Black bodies occupied, you know, in this sort of education, like come and educate, while in the same vein, the state is, you know, doing its work to make sure that, you know, it erases the work that you're doing, you know? In the time that we are in, I think we can't afford to say, oh, we didn't know, or we cannot afford the luxury of not knowing. We are in a very interesting time. What are we going to do about it? Are we just gonna say we didn't know? So yeah, I think that's where I'm sort of reflecting in this moment.
What are we going to tell our children, right? Yeah.
Exactly, because we will fail the next generation, and then they will come back and say again, oh, we didn't know, and until when? So, yeah.
Letting myself put in places where I'm told what I should play, because I decide what I'm gonna play. You should actually educate yourself, or maybe just get information about a DJ when you book him, and then don't tell him what to play because you think this is more the genre that people want to hear. Because I think it's some kind of art to put a story together. You decide that the audience might enjoy. This is actually a boundary for me, what I learned during the last year now, that I'm just sticking to my kind of genre, to my taste of music, and to the story I want to tell when I come, because I'm not coming spontaneously. I'm going to sit there 2 hours at home and prepare that set on minute. So yeah, let DJs do their magic and let the DJs tell their stories. That's my boundaries.
Is it very rude to come up and wish for a song? Is it very rude? Because I did that so many times.
I will smile it away.
But I learned something today. I'm not going to do that anymore.
So I think for me, it's always been a no to an all-white production team. So I make sure that I work in teams and spaces where I am not the only one, and often we are a majority. So that's really beautiful, and I think has been for me like a safe space also to work in. Another no is to be expected to fulfill stereotypes in my movement, in my choreography. So that I think has also kind of led me to work more, you know, in the free kind of scene, a little bit more niche, a little bit more specific, not so commercial. Also, you know, my body, my feminine Black body, I'm very particular as well how I work with it in terms of nakedness. I will not be naked on stage just because some white choreographer thinks it's gonna look great. And also no pay, underpay is a no for me. I don't work for free. If I invest my creativity without funding, then it's for my own work and my own research and something that I'm really passionate about, something that I believe in. But then I am, you know, kind of also in the driver's seat, but I will not work for free.
What is success for you? And has your definition of success changed over the years? Like what you consider to be a success in the past, is that still something that you consider a success in the present?
I think, yeah, definitely it has changed. I think when I first started, I considered sort of being in the room or getting, my foot in the door as, a level of success. And now, of course, I'm realizing it depends on the room and it depends on, what else is going on and, payment for artists and, resources and funding and all of these different things that go into it. I think if I could tell my younger self, I would say, don't do it. Find another career, another path. But I'm here now and I do, consider myself successful. And I would love for all of us to be able to tell whatever stories that we want to tell and to create whatever we feel moved to create, I would consider that success. That and of course being able to survive, off of the work that we do and to have ownership of the work that we do on all levels, working with, people that resonate with us. These are all kinds of levels of success that I would consider.
I think you said it all and so beautifully, so I don't want to repeat too much, but I think success, yes, there are so many different aspects of success. Also, I really include also my well-being, my mental and emotional well-being into that process of success. Maybe also in Germany, I don't know if there's that tendency of kind of pushing down a little bit your success or your power. You always a little bit have to hold it in. So, but I really take those little moments as well. Those little moments for me are very successful when I really feel like I'm touching the audience. I see those smiles. I see those dreams starting to operate. Those are really, really rich and successful moments for me.
I think it comes full circle again with what we were talking about in the very beginning, also, talking about ancestry, ancestors. But to think, I don't have to do it on my own. There were people before me and there were people after me, and I can hand it over to them. I don't, I think when I was also, very young, and I tended to think, I have to do all of that work on my own, fight for Black actors and actors of color, and they should have access and they should play every role that they want to play. And 10, 15 years later, some things have changed, but you're still amazed by some things. So that I think, okay, I did my little bit and I will continue to do so, but I don't have to do it on my own. There will be others. I hand it over. I do my part. They will do their part, and it's going to be fine. I guess it also has to do with trust, and which is hard sometimes. I think it is time for another little ritual, and my feeling tells me it has something to do with eating and the stomach. And as good fortune has it, we have cake here. Well, I made it for you guys, and it's a cake that my German grandmother actually always used to make for me because I really loved it, and I really loved my grandmother. She's also there on our shrine, Hildegard Schlottmann. And she always told me it's a Berlin cake. She always said that fits Berlin. It has to be easy and very good, because Berlin is tough and you don't have time to fiddle around. So I would like to share that with you, and then also, of course, with you. So maybe we could just hand it over to the audience. Please help yourself first, ladies, and then we can give it to the audience. I think we have two. about the past, we've talked about the present, and now at the end of this talk, I would like to take a look into the future. What do we feel could the future hold for Namibia and Germany? I would like to start looking with you into the future by watching an extract from the speech of the wonderful Chimamanda Adichie that she gave at the Humboldt Forum in 2021.
It is not that Europe has denied its colonial history. That would be too crude. It is instead that Europe has developed a way of telling the story of its colonial history that ultimately seeks to erase that history. The former French Prime Minister Nicolas Sarkozy gave a now infamous speech in Senegal in which he said, "I have not come to deny mistakes or crimes. Mistakes were made and crimes committed. But no one can ask of the generations of today to expiate this crime perpetrated by past generations." This is central to the story that Europe tells itself about its colonial history. It is a story that basically says, yes, colonialism happened, but. And whatever comes after the but is the focus of the story. What the focus on the but does is that it absolves. It frees Europe of responsibility, of a significant and traceable connection to the African present, and it allows Europe the glow of charity. But the truth is that the past does not merely tell us what happened yesterday, it also illuminates what happens today. If we acknowledge that present-day Europe is shaped by the Renaissance of 600 years ago, by the Enlightenment of 300 years ago, then surely we cannot say that what happened merely 100 years ago in Africa no longer matters. It matters.
So what would you like to pass on to the next generation?
Well, I actually always tell myself, since I was lucky enough that my name was mentioned in rooms, in the right rooms, and that actually opened doors for me, I always try to do the same. So no matter where I go, and I know that they might be looking for maybe DJs, for artists, for anything, maybe political educators, I'm always like, do you know about them? Did you hear that name? I'm showing videos, sending profiles, because I think this is important because people are really thankful if you mention people you consider as good to them, and they actually take advantage of it. When I'm able to step one foot in, it's not hard to maybe take the other one inside and pull somebody with me. And I think this is something we should always try to consider. It's not always about ourselves, because there's enough cake on the plate for everyone.
The one thing that I think I would like to add to that, as far as the future, I'm also always interested in working with Namibian youth. I think this is so important for me. Certain things that I just didn't know about myself and my self-worth, and thinking that I don't have anything important to say or to add, and having to go through that process of self-actualization. As a Namibian, that's really important, because we always grew up, thinking that, oh, no one knows about us, no one knows about Namibia. I travel to different parts and I say from Namibia, they're like, oh, we don't know about that. What is that? Where is that? We just have to know that we are players in the world as well. We exist in the world, and we have the right of movement and opportunity and access just like everyone else. Just because you come from an African country doesn't make you less than like somebody who comes from a European country. This is part of the kind of psychology of oppression and experiencing racism, and even from the other perspective that like, because you're white, you think you're better than, and that's not true either. And there has to be some sort of reckoning with that and seeing ourselves as equal. I think that's really, really important. Learning that your self-worth doesn't come from your whiteness. It comes from who you are as a person and how you define yourself outside of the whiteness. That robs you from, really important work and growth that you need to do as a human. These are things that I think I would like to impart to the future generation.
As a last question, and this question goes out to all three of you, what would you wish for both Namibia and Germany for the future? What would be your wish?
If we always say never and never again, we should always say never forget. And somehow I got the feeling that certain points, they're just forgotten. So that's why maybe point out what is happening or what happened and how the people behaved and what they think about them traveling there. We need to point out to the people what they're doing wrong or what they're trying to forget, because we are not forgetting.
Yeah, I would just say, give the land back. Land back. Give back the land. I would like to see a post-capitalist society. That's, yeah.
For both countries.
Yes, for both countries. I just wonder, like, what that leads to if we're constantly mining the earth and pulling over every single rock, and money is being funneled more and more to like very few people at the top. This is really a conversation that really needs to be had, and that a lot of us are really in the same struggle, whether you're white or black, male or female, that we're not each other's enemies, that really the enemy is like the very few who control us with everything, with very essential resources that we have to pay for. I think this is where the conversation needs to head. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I totally agree. If I can add, I think I would like to add the courage to really look at what has happened and what is continuing to happen, and to take responsibility for that in action, in the healing. So I wish that for the whole of Namibia, that would also mean returning some of the land, all the land from my family. So if I would have some of the land, which I don't, I would have long given it back. I would have, I always have this dream of also like a cultural art center space to also heal the land. Yeah, I think that's good.
Vitjitua Nika Dudu, thank you so much that you have been my guests tonight. So it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, wonderful audience, for sharing this space with us tonight. And I would like to wind up with a poem from a play about the great Afro-German poet and writer innen. The play is called Wintertime and was part of a compilation, My Sister, published in 2019 by Dr. Natasha Kelly. And after that poem that I will read to you in German and Vitjitua will read to you in English, you will see an enactment of love and hope and faith for the past and the present and the future that I had the honor to enact with these three wonderful ladies here last week in Berlin. I wish you a good night, everyone. Get home safely, take care of yourselves. It's turbulent times. Practice acts of self-care, respect the ancestors, and have a good evening. Thank you. Anfang von etwas. Heimkehrer. Immer wieder von vorn, zwischen Anfang und Ende von etwas. Noch einmal ganz anders, genauso. Klüger und unwissender als jemals zuvor. Und so viel weiter trotzdem. Im Kreis herum und zurück, ratlos und rastlos und müde. Heute und gestern und morgen sind eins. Niemand ist allein, unsere Namen stehen in den Händen der Ewigkeit seit Anbeginn der Welt. Immer wieder am Anfang und am Ende von etwas. Immer wieder gleich und ganz anders. Immer wieder auf der Suche nach Heimkehren. Immer wieder sind wir längst dort. Immer wieder suchen wir trotzdem weiter.
Beginning of something, homecoming. Again and again from the start, between the beginning and the end of something. Once again, completely different, precisely the same. Wiser, more ignorant than ever before, and yet so much more that we know. Around in circles and back, helpless and restless and tired. The present, the past, and the future are one. No one's alone. Our names are carved in the hands of eternity since the dawn of the world. Yet again, at the beginning and at the end of something. Yet again, the same and completely different. Yet again, we're in search of coming home. Yet again, we are already there. Yet again, we still keep searching.
But I'm very curious what to expect. I'm very curious.
I brought this. This is a necklace. It's actually a himba necklace. But for me it represents the past because these are these iron beads what Herero women used to wear, Herero men and women used to wear back in the day. And then this shell is an emblem of, not particularly this one, but a shell is an emblem of my family and my ancestors, and so this for me represents ancestry.
And what I bought actually something that I got home still, and what reminded me for the shrine, I definitely brought this one. So this is something my father took with himself from Namibia, because once he came to Germany after fleeing from apartheid, he never went back. And so I brought this for our ancestors.
I have a few things here that also, like same, I think like you know, there's always that connection for us between the past, the present and the future. But this is the ancestral part, which also represents kind of the past, perhaps in a way. And it just has different things, like sacred things that we use. For example, this is our sacred herb that we burn to communicate when we pray with our ancestors. Here are our beads also that we make. So these beads usually they have a message. And we also make like love letters and all sorts of things with these kind of beads. This one is also traditional but made from seeds. This one I got it in Namibia. So for me also, you know, seeds, of course the future, but you know, they are for me also representing the origin. And this is a stone as well from home in Namibia, from also the land where my mom's family is, where my mother was born. And yeah, this is also just a symbol to connect that ancient kind of history to some of our people who carry our oldest DNA in Southern Africa.
The future for me is my daughter, my beautiful daughter, and she painted this on a piece of toilet paper, actually. And I really like that. It doesn't need much, you know, and it can be something ordinary, but we can make the most out of it, and we can make something beautiful out of it. And for me, it's like we're all together, but everybody's also for his or her own, you know, we respect those boundaries, but it's still community. And it's just nice colors and very joyful and happy. So that's one of my most valuable art possessions, this piece of art. I really love it.
There's a train that comes from Namibia. There's a train that comes from Namibia in Malawi. We are told. There's a train that comes from Angola in Mozambique. There's a train that comes from Angola in Mozambique. We are told. There's a train that comes from Zambia and Zimbabwe. There's a train that comes from Zambia and Zimbabwe. We are told. There's a train that comes from Namibia and Malawi. There's a train that comes from Zambia and Zimbabwe. There's a train that comes from Angola and Mozambique.
It's an ancestor that came from my imagination. I think through your memories. Yeah, maybe. Exactly.
Maybe in the end we draw people that you know, because some artists who like to draw portraits, when you look at their portraits, you're like, this kind of looks like you. Or like they kind of draw a version of themselves or something.
Yeah.
How can you walk upon it? It's the music. It's the music of the earth, the music of the sun and the stars, the music of yourself, vibrating. Yes, you're music too. You're all instruments. Everyone's supposed to be playing their part in this vast orchestra of the cosmos.
decolonized, decolonized glamour talks, decolonized, decolonized glamour talks, decolonize my mind, yeah, decolonize, verschwend nicht meine Zeit, yeah, decolonize, die Art und Weise, wie ich denke und ich sehe, decolonize, die Art und Weise, wie ich selbst bin und ich rede, decolonize, zeig dir, dass alles auch anders geht, lass uns das Ganze mal anders sehen, switch Positionen, Realitäten, lass sie mal schweigen, lass uns mal reden, decolonize, decolonize, decolonize glamour talks.